morning. Let's get started. Today we're looking at an image of one of the most famous metaphors in yoga, that of the charioteer. And this was presented in the Upanishads early on, one of the first instances of understanding yoga as a practice. This was considered a great secret passed on to help people understand here the difference between the immortal soul, which is the passenger of the charioteer, not doing anything, right? Just unchanging, unaffected in a sense by the rest. And then the charioteer is the higher self, maybe the adult self, trying to rein in the wildness of the senses, which at times can be difficult to control, or maybe it's sensory experience, and it's done via the mind. And the mind can have many definitions here, just like thinking our way through solving the problem of the senses. But what comes through this presentation of the problem of suffering in relationship to that which is eternal, the immortal soul, right? So here with the guy struggling to hold the reins of these 5 horses, right, this is the problem of suffering. This is the problem of reincarnation, rebirth, the same patterns over and over again, this circular thinking in the mind, the vrittis, all the things that cause us suffering. And here's this immortal part, beyond death in a way. How do we manage this part? And so this part is both the problem and really the only way to solve it too. So yoga, the union of the mind and the senses and the higher intellect, the union of this is the problem, and it's the solution. Which when my teacher, Doug Keller, said that, I thought was incredibly intriguing. And so I did look up this image for the metaphor. This is from sequencewiz.org, a woman who creates some really great images to help simplify yogic concepts. So I love any metaphor that involves horses, because I was a professional horse trainer for 11 years before I was a yoga teacher. And horses are highly reactive. Horses will notice any small change in their environment almost immediately, and they attend to it with great interest. So if, say, you lead a horse out of the barn and maybe one of the trailers, a horse trailer has been moved 5 feet, the horse will freeze, get erect, its breath will increase, it might snort and take deeper breaths, its head carriage is much higher, its ears are pricked, all of its attention is on this one change, because when things change in a horse's environment, that could be, right, that's evolution having helped horses survive, that could be the lion, right? Suddenly, first I'm grazing in the field, and now there's an object in a different position that could be a predator. So the instinct is so deep, it can override training. And so people who handle horses have had to learn how to control an animal that is very fearful. It's a prey animal, so it's a survival advantage to be fearful, very reactive, even overreactive, subject to collective action that's unruly. All of these things can come up for horses. So when we lead the senses with our mind, we're trying to direct or control them. There's nothing wrong with the horse. There's nothing wrong with the nature of the horse. We love horses, and we want to have a productive partnership and life with them. In the old days, they would break horses. They would dominate horses through terrible means into submission. And that by breaking the horse's spirit, they thought they could then control the horse, which they did. And these barbaric practices that have now changed. And it's much more of this join up with the horse, work with its evolutionary nature. Horses love to be led. The herd structure works. And so it works because one horse or 2 horses, stallion and the head mare, make decisions for the group, and the the rest of the horses can relax because they're being guided in this way. So it's interesting to think of ourselves in this metaphor. There's a big part of us that is overreactive and fear-based, and we're afraid of being alone. And yoga practices working on all of these things: moderating the senses, quieting the mind, steadying the mind, practice being alone, alone with your thoughts, and learn to find steadiness there. So let's see how this plays out through our practice today. So let's start kneeling on a block. The block goes between the ankles. The feet point straight back. And you'll have to look and see that they point straight back, because they usually sickle, and the heel, as soon as I do that, my knee's like, the heels fall out. So it's like you're hugging the block gently with your ankles. And you want to make sure you're not on the buttocks. You lift up, pull the buttock flesh back, and then sit upright. If this doesn't work for you, you can sit higher. You can add a blanket, or you could even kneel on 2 blocks. And if the senses are very active this morning, you can turn the palms down. Right? So usually people are like, turn your palms up, and that's a very receptive pose, like, let's take more in. But there's going to be times when you're like, enough is enough, like, I'm not going to look at the newspaper anymore today. It's palms down, right? So we're reducing, right? The eyes close, we're reducing the amount of sensory input. And when you reduce what's coming in from the outside, you become more attuned to what's happening on the inside, whether it's good, bad, or neutral. If the barn were to ever catch on fire, the sort of thinking was you put a blindfold around. You'd have to blindfold a horse to bring them out, because they associate the barn with safety. So even though it's on fire, they would want to run back into the fire. And so you would have to blindfold it. And thank God I've never had to do that. Never seen it done. I don't know if that's actually true or helpful, but horses aren't good in an emergency. And, it takes skillful leadership with humans to help them. So what if you thought or felt that maybe you could lead your internal feeling, this overreactive herd of horses inside of you? What if the breath could lead them? And feel the steady, smooth, rhythmic nature of your inhales and your exhales. And although meditation is a seated, still practice, is powerful and probably a very necessary part of your spiritual path, my spiritual path, everybody's spiritual path, is to practice sitting still and being only with yourself. Movement is the nature of the horse. Movement is the nature of the human body. And horses that are allowed to move and that are given the most freedom that's possible, say living outdoors in a pasture, are the healthiest and the happiest by far. So you might find that you use movement through your asana practice as a way of calming the horses. Okay, so now we've felt the accumulated pressure of the kneeling position, of the stillness. And then we'll shift forward to hands and knees, take the block off to the side. And come to table pose. Feel free to pat under your knees. And hands in front of the shoulders, stretch one leg back at a time, push back through that heel. Now you might find it wanting to do the same kind of sickling where that heel, the ankle falls out. So you could even look back at it and ground through the big toe ball mount and press back through the center of the heel. And calf stretch might change a little bit. Go ahead and switch sides. Just let the foot behave as it wishes. Notice if it sickles. This heel might cut in, it might cut out. And then adjust the foot, pushing back evenly and straight. Okay, alternate sides at whatever pace you wish. And then you could start to switch sides through plank or through table, whatever's kindest to your shoulders this morning. And then as you push back through one heel, lift the opposite knee without lifting the pelvis any higher. Push the foot, the leg that's straight, push that foot down into the floor until you feel your quad engage, the muscle at the front of the thigh. And you can start to pedal the feet in plank or keep doing this changing of the legs. One leg straight, one knee bent through table. Okay, and then when you're ready, we'll go back to dog and pedal the feet here. Now you can watch the ankles look back. So that when the heel is stretching down towards the floor, the ankle is upright and vertical. The inner ankle, the outer ankle are equal. The arch isn't collapsing in. The inner arch isn't flattening. The outer arch, the pinky side of the foot's not collapsing. Inhale to plank, exhale to dog. And if this is too early or too much for the shoulders, you can rest in child's pose and then rejoin. Or you can do cat-cow as an alternative on hands and knees, inhaling to back bend, exhaling to round like a Halloween cat. Good. And then we'll all meet up in table and circle the body. So we're taking big circular movements, shifting forward to one shoulder, then the opposite, and then back to one hip and then the other. Reverse that circle whenever you like. And let it take you through a variety of spinal shapes so that you're side bending. You might be rounding a lot. You might be taking a back bend occasionally with the chin up and the tailbone up. You can twist a little bit. Using these movements to explore and feel. So when we take the horse out of the stall in the morning or out bring him in from the pasture, the paddock, we'd run our hand over the entire horse and looking at every part, because horses get into all sorts of trouble. If there's one nail that's sticking out on a fence, that horse will have found it, scratched up against it, and gotten a cut. You might feel the same way about some of your other pets, that if there's trouble to be had, they might find it. Okay, so now we'll rock forward. I walked my hands a little more forward so I could shift into what I call a knee plank. So if my toes were tucked under, my knees were up, it would be plank. but my knees are down and my feet are pointing straight back like child's pose. On the exhale, come back to that child's pose. On your inhale, shift forward. And you could let the pelvis start to lower towards the floor. So it's a variation of up dog. Knees are down. Exhale back to child's pose. Your hands can shift with you. They don't have to stay in place. All right, and then we're going to end up in child's pose. And this is Adho Mukha Virasana. So we sat in Virasana when we started the kneeling pose when you're sitting on the block, and we tried to point the feet straight back. So this is the same pose except folded forward. It's often called child's pose, but could you make your thighs parallel? And could you make your lower legs parallel? Could you point your feet straight back? And can your heels point up to the ceiling instead of falling out to the left and the right? Push up towards a vertical spine, but with a little more back bend. So we're lifting, the fingertips are still on the floor, and you arch your back and lift your chin. Even pull your fingers towards your knees isometrically to get the back to coil a bit. And then round like a Halloween cat, push all the way up to kneeling. So we're kneeling like camel pose. Don't worry, we're not going to do camel pose this early. And then take a look back at the feet. And you'll notice the position of the heels. They could be falling out. Or it kind of looks like they curl in. It's the ankle that's falling out, and the foot takes on the shape of what's called a sickle, which is apparently like a farming implement, like that I think it's, what's it also called? Isn't it like the Grim Reaper, and they use the scythe? Is that the same thing? Nobody knows, right? Because most of us have moved away from that agrarian culture. So, but what we're seeing is if you look at the line of your lower leg, and then the ankle kind of bows out, the foot bows out, and the foot looks curved. And if you press into the tops of your feet and center your ankles, it's now more of a straight line. There's no sickling or pushing of that ankle bone out. Now, who cares, right? It's like, why does that matter? Well, it matters because when the foot sickles, it's really hard on the knee. So go ahead and transition to a low lunge with the right foot forward and look back at that left foot on the mat and see if you can unsickle the foot, pointing it straight back. The best way that I know how to do this is to push the top of my foot into the floor, and it actually lifts. And there's now a space at the front of my ankle. The front of my ankle is not touching the floor. And then as I push into the top of the foot, I get the added benefit of toning the front of the back thigh. Now that you've got that, let that be an anchor. As you shift your pelvis forward, the front knee can go past the front ankle, and then shift back. And we'll go back and forth. If you have a block handy, or even two blocks, that can help you go back a little further into what's often called a runner's stretch, where the front leg is straight here, and don't sickle the ankle. Shift forward, don't sickle the back ankle, press the top of the foot into the floor, exhale, shift back, straightening that front leg, fingertips to a block or hands to the floor. Super interesting to notice which one of these poses you dislike more. Right, so the sense is always able to give us some information, and then the mind makes a judgment about it. Let's shift forward into the low lunge. Take the left hand to the floor, right hand to the front thigh, and twist towards your front leg. as you turn towards your front leg, make the front ankle more rigid. So we're going to do that by lifting the toes of the front foot and then tip the knee out to the side like Baddha Konasana. Now, if the ankle sickles, it'll curve towards the floor. I'll show you in the front view. It'll curve out. And what I want instead is for it to be rigid, as though you were wearing a ski boot. And then you twist towards your front leg and breathe. This is directing the stretch to the outer buttock. Okay, and then we switch sides. Left leg forward, right leg back, and lift the toes of the front foot, then tip the whole leg out, keeping the foot and ankle more rigid. And that should take the stretch out of the knee, out of the ankle, out of the foot, and put it into the front leg buttock. Twist the upper body towards the front leg and feel your breath. Added bonus here is to press the top of the back foot into the floor and keep that heel vertical. You might even be able to sneak a peek and see if it's rolled towards the pinky side of the foot. All right, and then we'll come back to center and take the cat-cow. Inhale, back bend. Exhale, round like a Halloween cat. Now do that with the feet pointing straight back. Keep going through the cat-cow, but shins are parallel. Tops of the feet are pressing into the floor. Does it power your moves? Does it power the movement of the spine? And it wasn't like that when the legs were just relaxed. If you push your hands forward and away and the feet are pressing into the floor, the whole pose is different. Good. And then you can rest in child's pose. Pointing the feet straight back, keeping a little space in front of the ankle bone. Heels are vertical. Slow your breath. The eyes are closed. The body's in a fetal position. This is a great way to reduce the amount of sensory input. How does your sense of internal well-being shift in this pose? Okay, then we'll come up to hands and knees. Let's do that forgotten side, which is left foot forward, right leg back, and we shift forward with the inhale and then back with the exhale towards that runner's stretch. And the block can be helpful as you shift back if the floor feels far away. So you're watching the shape of the ankle in the front foot so that the ankle doesn't fall out, the foot doesn't turn in, and same with the back foot. Press the top of the back foot into the floor. The heels should be pointing up to the ceiling. Interesting note is I think you might learn which poses yoga teachers don't like because they'll forget to do the second side. Forgetting is such an interesting part of the yoga practice. It's such an interesting part of life, and noticing the things that you forget, like, oh, I forgot to, why is that? Okay, very good. And then let's go back to the first side. So the right leg is forward and the left leg is back, and we'll come to that runner's stretch. This is the pose I don't like. And left hand comes to the block or the floor, and then right thumb, go ahead and hook that in the hip crease and roll the outer hip down. So that should help concentrate this. It should have made the stretch more unpleasant because it'll be concentrated in the outer hamstring. and we twist the upper body towards the front leg. So if your hand is not on a block and you're lower, it'll be more intense. So if it's too intense, raise the floor with a block. Okay, we bend into the knee to exit and then switch sides. Left leg forward, right leg back. Press the top of the back foot into the floor so it's active. Thumb hooks into the front hip crease. Twist towards the front leg. Can you be alone with the discomfort of this pose? And then bend into the front knee, release that side, and we'll come back to the dog pose. Tuck toes under, lift the heels, bend the knees forward, and with this sort of flointing action through the feet, you're on the ball mounts. You might be able to start to lift the toes off the mat. So just the ball mounts are on the mat, and the ankles are strengthened. They're stabilized like you have a little boot on each ankle. And start to work the heels down straight back. So we're hiding the heel behind the foot so you can't see it on either side. Don't let the knees twist in. You'll have to imagine there's a giant asparagus rubber band on above the knees, and you're pushing that rubber band, pushing out against it with the thighs and the knees. And keep directing those heels straight back and down for a pretty solid stretch at the back of the leg. All right, one more breath. And then walk your hands back to your feet, Uttanasana at the back of your mat. Slide your hands halfway up, inhale, exhale, fold. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, fold again. This time push the feet down and isometrically apart. Burst that asparagus rubber band as you come all the way up to standing with a flat back. Reach your arms up overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. Okay, let's get rid of this blanket on the mat. Now it's time to take off. My 13, almost 14-year-old daughter said she approved of my outfit today. Because it's high-waisted. Do you remember, guys, how long it took for us to get... We were high-waisted, and then everyone was like, well, it has to be low-waisted. It took me, so long to get into the low-waisted, and now the kids are like, ugh, low-waisted is horrible. High-waisted. So now I have to go back. And then she wants me to tuck my shirt in. These are the important things. All right. So let's practice lifting the heels and lowering them down. And this is an ankle strengthener. And I'll show you from the front view. So what often happens is as soon as we lift, we roll to the pinky edge of the foot, and that's the ankle sickling. Right? This is actually really easy for me to do, is to just sickle the ankle, and I could stay up on my heels for a long time. But what I want to do instead is evenly work the feet. So instead of rolling to the outer edge, I need to keep some weight to the big toe ball mount. Some of you who collapse, you'll need your feet will kind of lift the other way, and you'll have to kind of work to balance the foot action. What you're looking to see, because you can look down at your own feet, is when you lift, the knees shift forward right over the middle toes of the foot, and the ankle doesn't fall out, and the arches don't collapse in. This might be easier when the heels are up, but when you put your heels down, you might notice that the ankles soften inwards. So especially people with falling arches or flatter feet, you're actually better when the heels are lifted, and it's when the heels come down that we see the knees knock and the inner ankle soften like I'm showing. So can you keep the knees straight ahead, equidistant, the feet straight ahead, equidistant? Feet could turn slightly out and work well here too, especially if you are having trouble with your balance. Go ahead and turn the feet out 10 to 15 degrees. Okay. So when you work the calf muscles, you're working the arch of the foot arches, right? We have the inner arch, the outer arch, and the transverse arch across the ball mounts. So now let's see if we can sweep the arms alongside the ears as we lift the heels, sitting into Utkatasana. Now you don't have to lift high, you guys. You might just be lifting like a fraction of an inch. And then inhale up to Urdhva Hastasana. Straighten your legs. You're in Tadasana with your arms overhead. Exhale, the arms stay overhead. Lift the heels and squat into your Utkatasana chair pose. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, Utkatasana. Follow your breath. Keep going. And maybe you can keep the heels up the whole time. And then next time you're up, we'll release the arms out and down. Let the heels rest. Settle into the heaviness of the heels. Feel that the weight is shifted back away from the ball mounts into the heels. The knees are soft with an impulse to want to bend forward. So they're not locking back. And notice how it is to have a lot of sensory input from something so far away from the busy mind. The sensations or the painfulness of thinking may have subsided because there's so much interesting things going on in your feet. That can be really helpful, okay? So let's step right foot forward, left leg back into a pyramid pose stance. Your feet are as wide as your pelvis. And then both knees, when they bend, see that they bend over the middle of each foot. So especially that back foot, don't let it bend to the inside of the big toes. See, my knee cracked when I popped when I demonstrated the wrong thing. Okay, so what we'll do here is, with a little softness in the knee, we'll lift both heels up in this pose. Your arms might need to be out to the side. Maybe you're touching a wall or have your hands to a chair for an added sense of balance. And then we'll let the heels come down, but keep some of the weight on the front ball mount. So you're light on the front heel, but heavy on the back heel. So drive that back heel down and anchor it down like you're going to stake your tomatoes or your cucumber plant, and you drive it into the arid earth that we have right now. It hasn't rained in so long. And start to fold forward with that strong stake of the back leg driving into the earth and the lighter heel of the front foot. And then the hands can come to the front shin. If that feels too deep, you keep your hands on the hips or hands to a chair or a wall. If your hands are on your shin, push the shin forward into resisting hands so the chest stays open, free. We're not rounding the back here in this forward fold. Did you lose the stake of the back foot? Drive it into the earth. And then let the driving of the back heel down pull you vertical. Inhale upright with your torso. Exhale, bend both knees, lift both heels. Step forward with the back foot, switch sides. Okay, so pyramid pose with the left leg as the front leg. Take your feet as wide as the pelvis. Okay, we're not heel to heel, and then we'll practice bending each knee forward. Make sure the knees track, especially that back foot. Back foot is turned out about 30 degrees, and so the back thigh has to be turned out as well. Practice lifting and lowering both heels. And then as you set the front heel down, it's light. There's more weight, like you're wearing high heels, more weight to the big toe ball mount. This is the only downside to giving up wearing high heels, where you lose that skill when you have to fake it in a yoga practice. Cut the back heel down into the earth. Can you feel it fire and connect all the way up to the glute? Maintain that strong staking action of the back leg as you fold forward over the front leg. Torso over the front leg, pelvis shifts to the right. And hands press into the shin so the chest doesn't fall or collapse to the floor. Going for about a parallel torso here. Should feel like the legs are really working. And then the back is really quiet. Upper body is pretty quiet. Drive that back heel into the earth. See if that's enough to bring you up easily to vertical. Bend both knees, lift both heels, step forward to the top of the mat. Heels down, inhale, circle up, reach up. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, come halfway up. Exhale, we'll step back to plank and hold. Push back through the heels here. And then slowly lift the pelvis as you keep pushing back through the heels, pushing them down towards the mat. And they may reach. You might feel like you're in a long downward dog stance, but see if you can just go with that for now. And very good. And then we'll shift forward to plank. This time shift past the wrists, come to the tips of the toes, and then exhale, rolling back to the dog pose. Seeing if the heels will reach towards the floor. Inhale forward to the very tips of the toes. Feel every surface of the foot as you roll back to dog. Very nice. Okay, this time when we shift forward to plank, the knees come down, point your feet, press the tops of the feet into the floor like we did in our child's pose. But instead of child's pose, we're going to lower to the earth. Now, when you're pressing the tops of the feet, can you feel that your core is engaged? Like, wow, my feet are connecting to my core. And by activating my feet, I activate my core. And activating your feet might be easier than drilling your core with passive, quiet legs. All right, we've held here long enough. Use a stronger exhale to lower all the way down. Did you lose the press of the top of the feet? Sweep forward into Sphinx. So you're up on your forearms. Press the tops of the feet into the floor without letting the knees lock up to the ceiling. If they pop or click, you're just hyperextending the knee joint. So the knees might need to press down towards the floor a little, even as you press into the tops of the feet. Feel the power translate all the way up through the body. If there's a little bit of compression in the back, try widening your legs, pressing it down into the tops of the feet, and then lifting perhaps the elbows so you can come into a deeper variation of Sphinx pose. Very good. And then exhale to lower down. Rest on the forehead or the chin. And bend one knee at a time. Let your pelvis rotate. And then we'll bend the left knee. Keep the right leg straight. Press the top of the right foot into the floor. Push the left knee down till your butt sticks up. So now we're arching the back as we're deeply contracting the back of the leg. Grab a hold of that left ankle with your left hand for the quad stretch. And then instead of pressing the knee down, you can let it lift. Roll the left shoulder back, and maybe we do a little Sphinx with the right arm as we come up for this quad stretch on our belly. Hopefully that took care of any cramping in your leg. If the foot cramps or the hamstring cramps, you're tucking preemptively too much to come into the quad stretch. You want to stick your butt up in the air before you grab that foot. Release that side, press the top of the left foot down, bend the right knee, push the right knee into the floor till your back arches. Reach back and grab a hold of the right ankle. We grab the ankle so that we don't sickle the foot. So we're trying to get the foot to be straight. Press into left forearm. For a deeper quad stretch, roll that right shoulder to the ceiling. Elbow to the ceiling. Square the hips, square the chest. Good. And then interlace your hands into like a forearm plank. Elbows just in front of the shoulders. Push down with the forearms until the pelvis lifts. Press into the tops of the feet. And maybe you can lift the knees by pressing into the tops of the feet. If it feels like your feet are going to break, tuck your toes under and lift the knees. Couple more breaths here in our plank. All right, and then the knees down, pelvis down, and hands underneath the shoulders. Roll the shoulders up and back. Push into the hands and up to hands and knees. Keep the toes tucked under as you come back to child's pose. And I'd be curious to know, those of you who have issues with child's pose, and there's many people who do, it's not the relaxing, comfortable resting pose for many people. I'm wondering if toes tucked under makes the pose more approachable for you or not. All right, we'll keep the toes tucked under as you walk your hands back towards your knees so your torso comes more upright. And then we're in broken toe pose. Doesn't that sound fun? So broken toe pose, the legs are close together, the thighs are parallel, the shins are parallel, and we're trying to get to the ball mounts of the feet and off the toes themselves. So if it feels like a broken toe pose, that's not what I want. So you might need to lift the knees and place a block underneath them as I'm showing here. And then sit back. And if the compression at the back of the knee is more of the issue, you can place a blanket behind the knees and sit back. Now, every time I do this pose, my heels and ankles want to fall out. And most people's do, as I'm showing here. That's just, and as the lower leg twists in, it has a negative impact on the knee. So shift forward to table. Can you bring the inner ankles together to touch? And then keep them touching so you're really aware of that sensation of them touching. We actually need to heighten some of our senses as we quiet the others. And then sit back, keeping them together. Some people actually feel a quad stretch when you're able to stop the ankles from collapsing. It directs the stretch to the appropriate tighter muscles. It's a big part of how I practice yoga, is to stop the collapse of the joint, stabilize the joint, and direct the sensation to muscle, not joint. And we're each sitting here in contemplation of this shape. If it gets too intense, you can shift forward, take a little break. You can also turn your block up higher so it's at the middle height. Can you direct, lead, guide with your mind? The reins of the mind. Can we direct the senses, direct the powerful energy, the responsiveness of the horse? Right? Can we direct that with the breath? Okay. So if you exited before I did, that's absolutely fine. And then we'll shift forward to hands and knees and feel the pleasure of opening up the back of the knee. Push back through the heel, and you can point the foot, having a renewed sense of integrity in that ankle joint, an acute awareness of its position. Very good. And then we can come to table, cross the shins, and then come to a seated position. If you're like, that is not a good idea for me, you swing both legs to one side, come down to your butt, and then swing the legs around in front of you. Okay, so either way, whatever works and is the smarter choice for you. Now, when we do a seated position, we're trying to, let's put the left leg in front of the right. The ankles tend to sickle. So if I just relax my feet, there's this little curve through the ankle, this concave top here, and the outer ankle bone is touching the floor. So if we reach through the inner heel or make the outer ankle rigid and firm, the outer ankles lift off the floor. That's how I want you to sit in your cross-legged Sukhasana. So you're taking your feet underneath your knees, clear the buttocks if you're far away from the sit bones, and lift the outer ankle of each foot off the floor. And then sit here with that awareness through the ankles. It changes the pose. To switch sides, you'll either put your hands behind you, lean back to do it, or you can bring your hands into prayer position, push the hands into one another to activate your core, switch the cross of the legs, lift the outer ankles off the floor, widen the feet so it's underneath each knee, and then palms down, quieting the senses. Okay, very good. So then let's come to another side body position, which is the side plank. So we'll sit on the hips first. So we're kind of lounging comfortably first, but then go ahead and push through the inner heels, make the ankles strong again. And we're going to see if the core works better if we activate the core via the feet. So we'll roll that shoulder back, bottom shoulder back, left shoulder back, and the hand is in line with the hip. And then go ahead and already stack the feet. I'm going to let you use your front hand to stabilize you rather than staggering the feet. Okay, so we'll try to keep the ankles stacked, push down into the outer edge of the foot, and then lift up and focus all of your attention on stabilizing through the ankle. Notice if the pose feels approachable in a slightly different way. It's still hard, no doubt. but can you feel the feet activating the core? And to be clear, the outer ankle of the bottom foot's completely off the floor. You're activating by pushing the pinky edge of the bottom foot down into the floor and reaching through the inner heel. Okay, so you can switch through plank and roll right over to the other side, or you can start with the pelvis down. Make sure that you set the shoulder of the second side and reach through the inner heels. The feet are starting stacked. Your feet and your hips and your hand are all in one line, and then you push down. Ankles are rigid and strong here. Top arm up is optional. Couple more breaths. If you entered it from plank and didn't come to the floor, you might already be done. That sounds more fair. And then you can shift into your plank, come into child's pose or dog, and then notice the behavior of the feet. Notice means feel, and notice means look. Are the heels hidden behind the feet? Are the knees centered over the middle toe of each foot? Is the stretch in the calves instead of the back of the knee? Instead of just the low back or the sacrum? It's instead of the sit bone area. Let's walk the hands back to the feet. So if you're in child's pose, you come up to Uttanasana, standing forward fold, and then we'll bring the feet together. When the feet are together, the stretch is much stronger. Lift the toes, lift all your arches, bend the knees slightly forward, and the knees have an impulse to widen, even as they are not physically moving. Yes. Take the right leg in front of the left, cross the legs at the shin or the knee, in our forward fold here. Legs are straight. Knees are trying to press forward because they'll want to hyperextend back. Joints tend to collapse instead of, why would the body choose the intensity of the stretch? Why would a horse work when it could rest and graze? And the stretches in the outer hamstrings. Okay, switch, left leg in front of right. If it's not intense enough, you widen the feet, lifting the pinky edges of the feet off the floor. Make sure the knees have an impulse to go forward. And if you don't feel much of a stretch, your hips are probably way back. Shift forward, pelvis over ankle bones as best you can. More weight on the ball mounts than the heels. Okay, and then we'll uncross the feet, set the distance that you want for dog. If you have shorter, tighter hamstrings, your feet are wider. Keep the heels down, lift the toes, shape the arches, and then walk out to dog without lifting the heels. So your stance might be shorter, or you might find that as we've released some of the tightness and stabilized the foundation of the pose, you can get out to about your regular length here in dog. Knees are not twisting in. Most of us will feel a strong stretch outer hamstring. Lift the heels up, and it tends to shift you forward. And when your heels come back down, everything shifts down. Do that a couple times so you're conscious of when you lift the heels, the weight transfers more to the hands. And then see if we can not let that happen. So have the hands push, and instead of it shifting you forward, let the lifting of the heels lift the sit bones up.
If you have a hamstring attachment injury, I'd rather you shift forward to your hands. Don't let the sit bones lift too high. But as the sit bones lift higher, you'll see more arch come into my back. And all of this has just come from the attention to the ankles. Right, so then we'll come down to kneeling, make the legs parallel. Could even bring the legs together to touch if that's available. Inner ankles together to touch for our Adho Mukha Virasana, child's pose. Let's see if that's a little more approachable now. Tops of the feet press into the floor. Inner ankles touch. All right, let's press up to kneeling like camel pose. Right foot forward, tuck the back toes under. Lift the back knee so you're in a lunge. Pause, hold. Reaching back through the back heel as you drive the front heel into the earth. Shift forward, bend the back knee, step forward. You're in Utkatasana. Switch both hands to the left thigh. Step the right leg back into a high lunge. Push back through the heel as you drive the front heel into the mat. And don't let that back knee twist in as you bend it. Step forward and then see if you can do this without your hands. So hands out to the side, switch into the high lunge, alternating sides. Emphasizing the stability of the ankle, the driving of the feet into the mat. And then some of you, if this is feeling good, could even lift the arms overhead. Stepping forward into a variation of Utkatasana to switch sides. And if that's feeling easy, you can do all three. Both heels lift. Step forward into a lifted heel Utkatasana to switch sides. Heels are staying up the whole time. If you're more flexible, driving that front heel down is probably smarter. It's going to be more stable through the lumbar curve. Next time you're in Utkatasana, inhale, straighten the legs, reach the arms up. Exhale, arms to your side. Pause, breathe and feel. And then we'll bend both knees forward, just a tiny bend so the arch comes into the back. Shift your weight to your right leg. Bring that left heel close to the buttock. Grab the ankle with your left hand for our standing quad stretch. So we arched the back so we wouldn't get that cramp. Make the pointing of the back foot real, meaning you're emphasizing it, and push the foot into your hand. If the ankle's not sickling, here you can actually hold the top of the foot and push the foot into your resisting hand. If that gives you a better quad stretch. If it starts to take it into the knee, retreat back to the ankle. Release that side, bend the left knee forward, shift the weight over the left leg. Arch the back as you bring the right foot close to the buttocks so the right hand can grab the ankle. We'll start there and point the foot in earnest as we straighten the standing leg. Working the quad stretch. Experiment with bringing the hand to the top of the foot and pressing that back. It works better on this side for me. I just get a deeper, more solid stretch. It doesn't go into my knee. This is my tighter hip. If it just goes into the joint, retreat back to the ankle. And then go ahead and release the pose. Inhale, circle the arms up, sitting into Utkatasana. Exhale, back up to standing, release the arms. Inhale, circle the arms up, sit into Utkatasana. Exhale, come to standing. So we're using that inhale to sit and an exhale to stand, because I want you to drill the feet into the floor and tighten the belly as you stand. Inhale, sit. Exhale, stand. And the hands, as you come to standing, they're almost like pushing down against, right, like through water. Like coming up to the surface. One more time. And keep that feeling of the pushing down through the arms, the strong drilling of the feet towards the center of the earth. Shift your weight to your right leg. Bring the left knee in towards your chest. Hold on to it with both hands. So you're standing on the right leg by itself. And then you can stay here, or you can take the first two fingers of the left hand and hold the big toe for Hasta Padangustasana, and then extend that left leg out in front of you. And use the push of the raised foot to mirror the action of the standing foot drilling into the earth, and that feeling of pushing down through the arms as though you're coming up to the surface, pushing through waves. So you're pushing down to stand tall. Very nice. And bend that front knee, release that side. Inhale, circle the arms up, sitting into chair. Exhale, push to the surface of the water. Inhale, sit. Exhale, stand. One more time. Shift your weight to your left leg. Drill that foot into the earth. Hug the right knee into the chest. You stay here because this could be plenty of a balanced challenge, or use the first two fingers of the right hand for Hasta Padangustasana, hugging that leg in close to the arm, extending the right leg out in front of you. Both ankles are rigid and strong and stable. That very firmness allows a profound sense of ease through the rest of the body. It's like the hoof is the most important part of the horse. It's comparable here too. And then we'll release that leg. Inhale, circle the arms up. Exhale, fold forward. We'll move through our vinyasa. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, bend the knees, step back to plank, pause, push back through the heels into the dog. Inhale into plank again, shift forward, knees down, lower to the floor, exhaling. Inhale into your variation of cobra or up dog or sphinx. Exhale, hands under the shoulders, back to child's pose. Then you come into table, cross the legs behind you, switch the cross so it's non-habitual so you can sit back. If that doesn't work, swing your legs around to sit cross-legged. We'll meet up with your left shin in front of your right. Clear your sit bones if you're on your tailbone. Sit up higher if your knees are higher than the top of your pelvis. Okay, so the front leg is the left. And so we're going to twist towards that foot. So bring the left hand to the outside of the right knee. Turn that palm out. Right hand behind you. Let it act as a second spine to help you sit more upright. As you twist right with the upper body. I think I want to do this the other way. Yeah, I want to do it the other way. So the left shin in front, we twist towards the left knee. That feels better. So we forget, even yoga teachers forget. So we'll take that right hand to the outside of the knee, palm facing out, left hand behind you. Push down into the floor, twist ribs left but navel right. Anywhere there's pinching in the back, broaden and widen that area. Look over the back shoulder. Are your outer ankles on the floor? Can you get them off the floor? Stay in the twist, look over the front shoulder. And then soften to release the pose. Now you can lean back and push into your hands to switch sides. Or you can try prayer position, push into the palms of the hands. You'll still lean back a little bit to switch sides. So the right shin is in front, which means we twist right. Left hand to the outside of the right knee, right hand on the floor behind you. Push down to lift up. Get those outer ankles off the floor. Twist right with the ribs, but left with the navel. Stay in the twist, but look straight ahead. And then release. Let's hold this cross of the legs with the right shin in front. As you fold forward, don't let the ankles collapse to the floor. Use your hands to walk back up to seated. Switch the cross of the legs, outer ankles up, fold forward. Push into the hands, lift up halfway, walk your hands back. And then we'll scoot forward on the mat if necessary so that you can lie down on your back. Arms in goalpost. Maybe a little twist from side to side here if you feel like you want that. Head turns opposite of the knees. Very easy, gentle motion here. Come back to center. Create your pelvic tilt using your feet, which means you kind of drive the heels into the mat, and that will flatten the back without moving your feet. Drag the heels towards the buttock isometrically to create your arch. Do that a few times. And do the same action using just your right foot. And then do the same pelvic tilt using just the action of the left foot. Should feel like you're getting equal results. And neither side is weaker. Both sides are nice and activated and turned on and fully functional. And from there we can release the legs into Supta Baddha Konasana, the knees out to the side, soles of the feet together. And pubic bone and hip points should be about level here. And we can hold the shape for our early Shavasana, just the first minute or so. When it becomes less helpful, or if the sensation just goes into the joints, you'll release your legs out straight. Release the legs to straight if you haven't. Notice their behavior as you let the legs go. Let the information coming in from the senses in the lower body direct your attention, quieting the mind. Dwell in the feet, dwell in the ankles. There was an old lady who lived in a shoe. Roll to the center of the heels. Push the heels down into the floor as you stretch the legs and the arms away from each other. Full body stretch. And then point one foot at a time, feeling the pelvis respond, side bodies respond. And then push one heel down into the floor so the other knee can come into the chest. Doesn't matter which one. Then bring the second knee in. Both knees are hugging in. And take as much time as you need here, massaging the back. When you're ready, roll to your side. And push into your hand to come up to an easy seat. Hands at heart center. Feeling the power in your body. The stillness, the quietness of the mind. Bow to your practice. Namaste.